Written problem.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So today is a part 2 for this disaster recovery. So everyone taken dinner?
Yes.
Okay, I believe yes. Okay, so let's start. Okay, just have an overview. Last week, we actually covered these 3 topics within node failure, within cluster failure, and cluster failure. Okay, so this week, we will continue with the remaining 3 topics: chassis, rack, site failure. Okay, so before we start, let's recap what we actually discussed on last week. Okay, the first one is about within node. Okay, within node means that some of the components fail in one of the server. Example, this failure. Okay, it can be other parts also. Okay, mostly in our what we actually mentioned last week is more toward the storage disk failure and cache disk failure. Okay, so other than within the node, right? So it can be within the cluster failure. So within cluster failure, example is the entire node failure. Okay, so and one of the server totally down, so it considered as the node failure within cluster. Okay, so the other topic which we covered last week is the cluster failure. So example here, we have the 2 cluster, right? So each cluster with the 4 nodes. So out of sudden, the one of the cluster fail due to maybe power or any reason. So the entire rack can be down in sudden. Okay, so this you need the something like VM replica or cluster sets in order for you to recover back your data or fill back your data. Noel, your site can admit people to join in. I think somebody joined in, right?
Can you help to admit or not?
Let me see. Yeah, I think no, nobody, because I heard something. Okay, it's okay. Let me continue. So this is a cluster failure. So this week we'll discuss about this topic number 4, chassis failure. Okay, I think somebody in already. Can you see? Yeah, Siva.
I mean,
You admit already, Okay, please help me because I normally when the time I'm in the slide mode, I cannot see those people actually join in.
okay, I agree.
Okay, thank you. So this is the today's topic, chassis failure. Okay, but I will combine the chassis failure and the rack failure together actually. Okay, because these 2 topic scenario almost the same. Okay, so let's look at this chassis failure. So chassis failure can only happen if you have a black server. So because this black server, all the node inside actually sharing the same chassis and sharing the same power supply. Okay, can be the power supply, sharing the same network controller. Okay, so if power in the chassis failure or the network controller fail or top of the rack switches fail, so this can causing the chassis failure. Okay. Example, chassis failure. So let's say you have 3 chassis, and then each chassis you have 4 nodes. So in total, you have 12 nodes deployment. Okay. So one of the chassis fail, then you have to think the way to actually fill over the VM to remaining nodes. So this is chassis failure. So how can this be done? Actually, through this PowerShell. So this PowerShell actually you see it's like, wow, scary, right? But don't worry, actually it's just 2 parts only. Okay, so the first part actually is this one, is the first part. Then second part is this. Okay, so the first part is to create the cluster fault domain. Okay, so we create a cluster fault domain using this command new minus cluster fault domain, followed by the name of the chassis. So here I define chassis 01, 02, 03. If according to this diagram, right, we have three chassis, right? So the command I create also chassis 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then okay, the fault domain should be chassis. Sorry, this one should be chassis. I think I forgot to change it. This should be the chassis. Okay, so that's why I say almost this chassis and the rack almost the same because it's just the type differently. Okay, then you specify the location where you put this chassis at. Okay, after you define this fault domain, then this second command is to assign the nodes. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 12. You assign this node to each of the fault domain. Okay, like this one, 1 to 4 server assigned to the chassis 1. This is the second chassis server assigned to chassis 2. So after you define this, then you have already done the fault domains configuration for the chassis. Okay, so when the time you're facing the problem, like just now what I showed, the VM will autofill over to the remaining nodes. Okay, so I'm not going to show top two details because it's almost the same with the rack failure. So we'll talk more on the rack failure. So let's one thing which I want to highlight is about this fault domain. Fault domain awareness is disabled by default in the Windows Server 2019, 2022, and it must be enabled through the Windows registry. So we can use this command to actually enable this fault domain awareness in the registry. Get cluster auto assign node site equal to 1. So once you enable this, then fault domain will be enabled. And one thing which I want to highlight, you should configure the fault domain before enabling the storage space direct. Okay, so if you still remember how to set up the Azure Stack HCI, so maybe I just run through, tell you the step. Okay, so the first step is like we enable join domain and then enable those components required for the Azure Stack HCI. Then the next thing is to create a cluster, right? After create a cluster, if you want to configure this fault domain, right, you should start to configure before you enable the storage space direct, which is the virtual storage for you. Okay, if you configure the fault domain after the storage space direct creation, you still possible can create, but you need to evict each node when the time you specify. One by one, you evict from the cluster. Okay, and one thing, fault domain right now can only be configured using the PowerShell. No GUI, no GUI yet. Okay. Then talk about this topic 5, rack failure. Actually, it's almost the same. That means we are actually continuing the discussion. So this rack failure, it can be the entire rack power failure. Okay, the rack, we have the power. Okay, the power controller fail, or can be the top of the rack switch fail. Almost same like the chassis, right? Can be the network point to the rack failure. This is something a bit different because this is like the network point. That means your connection from for the rack to the core switch, right? That connection fail. Okay, or any problem causing the nodes in the rack down. That means entire nodes in the rack fail, then it considered as rack failure. Okay. So when the time you have rack failure, example, you have the VM at the rack number 1, and then rack got problem, then the VM will be auto fail over to the other rack. Okay, and how to achieve actually same like the chassis failure is through the same command, just like you define the rack different, and then this fault domain is rack. Just now is the chassis. I should change it. Okay, so this is a rack type. The fault domain type is a rack. And then after that, you assign the node to the fault domain. It's the same. Okay. Then next thing, after you actually define all the command, right? You go to the failover cluster manager, then you click the nodes, and then you see at the right hand side, you see this column, rack chassis, then you will see what you actually configured. Okay. After that, we discuss this. In the rack, like this example, you have the 6 node in a cluster. And then each 2 nodes, right, mounted in each rack. Okay. In this scenario, how many racks can fill? Okay, I'm not going to tell you the answer right now, but I'm going to show you something. Then after that, you think. Huh? Okay, let's take a look on this. Now okay, I think, let me wait. I replay again. So this is the slab, okay, slab data, and then you have a copy. And then it actually fill up this data to the 3 nodes Azure Stack HCI server. And if you actually know it, this is the two-way mirror configuration. This is the two-way mirror running on 3 node cluster. Okay, so when the time you have the 3 nodes running, right, with the two-way mirror configure, right, so you see the data will actually populate equally until all the server actually have almost the same amount of data. Okay, it will not leave the data any of the dot empty. It means all the node will have the data to be filled up. Okay, so with this kind of configuration, do you think how many node of the server can be done? Two-way mirror in the 3 nodes cluster. Okay, let me give you a hint. Two-way mirror can only allow 1 node fill. Okay, two-way mirror can only have a 1 node fill. But normally we create this two-way mirror with the 2 nodes. But now it's the 3 nodes. So although it's the 3 nodes, at the end, the result still the same. Only allow 1 server field. Only allow 1 server field. Okay. So this is a two-way mirror in the 3 nodes cluster. Let's look at another example. 3-way mirror in the 6 nodes cluster. Okay. So you have the 6 node, but this 6 node, you use the 3-way mirror as the resiliency. Okay, to build up the volume. So when the time you're using this way, you see, you will have a 3 copy of the data. And this 3 copy of the data will allocate to every server. No? It will not just like, I like this server, I put here. No? So all this data will actually allocate to every server. Just like what I show you in the animation on the two-way mirrors. So same thing, like this configuration, it will allow only 3 servers. It will allow only 2 servers down. Okay, if you have 3 servers down, then your cluster will not sustain. You will down. No? So this, of course, not only happen to the servers, it can be the disk also. If the disk in the server number 1 or server number 2 or server number 3 down at the same time, then you are causing the same things happen. Because 3-way mirror can only allow up to 2 server down. It cannot up to 3 server down. So now back to this question. How many racks do you think can fill in the 6 nodes deployment? 2 nodes mounted in each rack. No? Answer is only 1 rack can be done. Because each rack we have 2 servers. This deployment is actually, I can say, no matter you're using the mirror accelerator priority, or using 3-way mirror, same thing. It can allow only up to 2 servers down. And then in this configuration, because each rack we only have a 2 server, so it allow only 1 rack down. Okay, so I giving this answer, maybe you will get amazing like, oh, how come? 6 servers, then only allow 2 servers down. If X servers, is it means that only 2 servers down also? Yes. Yes. Answer is yes. Also, 8 nodes, even 12 nodes, in this kind of configuration, it also allow only 2 nodes failure. Okay. Then how can this be improved? If we have more nodes, right? So by the time you have more nodes, doesn't mean that I have more resiliencies. That means make the servers that have the how to say, yeah, you have the more safety when the time you have more server down. How can we achieve that? Okay, answer is through this delimited allocation or scope volume. So when the time you have more than actually 4 servers, you have more than 4 servers, you should actually start to consider using this method, scope volume. Okay, with this delimited allocation, you specify a subset of server to be used. Okay, so and this requirement is minimum 4. So you need to have a minimum 4 or above. Okay, instead of allocating across every server, the slabs are allocated only to the subset of server you specify. Okay, remember just now, I go back. When the time you have 3 servers, 4 servers, right, all these slab actually will be allocated to the server equally. It will not leave one of the server field empty. Okay, so this one you understand, huh? Then now we come back to this one. Okay, so if we didn't configure this scope volume, all the data will actually allocated equally to this 6 server. But if I use this scope volume, I can specify, okay, I want the data to be allocated to the specific 3 servers only. Example, server number 1, server number 3, server number 5. Okay, with this configuration, let's say 3-way mirrors, let's say 3-way mirrors, it allows server 1 down, it allows server 3 down, but it cannot have a concurrent 1, 3, 5 down. It can be the combination of 1, 2, 3 down, no problem. Okay, 1, 2, 3, or even 4 server. I think you still can sustain. Okay, now as long as server number 1, number 3, number 5 not down at the same time, then your volume, your cluster is still available. Okay, so like you say, with the example allocation, if the volume is likely to survive 3 concurrent failure, if node 1 and 6 go down, only 2 of the node that hold the 3 copy of data are down, and the volume are still online. Okay, so far any question? Everyone good, huh? Okay, maybe this is a bit new to you, but I think is a new concept. So very important for those who want to deploy more than 4 nodes. Okay. Okay, I urge you to look for this GitHub site. Okay, this GitHub site actually gives the lab scenario on how to configure the fault domain and even test on this fault domain. You see this task number 4 is to configure the fault domain on the failover cluster. Okay. And if you want to go to this website, this is the QR code. Okay, you can take a capture on this QR code if you want. And then the URL, if you want to capture, you want to copy down, is here. But anyway, I think this slide we will share to you, don't worry. Okay, so I give you some time to actually take a copy. So far, everyone good? Got any doubt, any question? Feel free to ask. Okay.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Yeah, correct. Okay, I think we go to the next one. So it's the quiz time. Which one of the following is not considered as a rack failure scenario? Okay, the A, entire rack power failure. B, top of the rack switches failure. C, server capacity disk failure. D, network port linked to the rack failure. Which one? Okay, the answer is C, server capacity disk failure. So this C is not considered as rack failure, but is the within NOT failure. Okay. So second question. Fault domain of Azure Stack HCI can be configured using Windows Server Manager. True or false? Answer is false. Right now, this fault domain can only be configured using the PowerShell. Okay. So no question. We come to the next topic. Is the site failure. Is a site failure. Okay, site failure defined as what actually shown in this picture. So as what you can see, there are 3 data centers: Penang, Selangor, and Johor. Okay, now suddenly one of the site here, then followed by another site here. So you still have the remaining one site to support you. So this is mean that site failure. So site failure, when the time you have this kind of problem, the type of recovery method are as below. So the first one, VM replica. VM replica, I think everyone is not strength to this. In fact, last week I already demo to you VM replica, which is one of the functions available in the Hyper-V. Okay, very powerful. Okay, so, you should use this one as the DR for your company or for your organization. The second one is the storage replica. Storage replica is also available in the Hyper-V. And this is the volume level replication, not the VM, but it's the volume level. Okay, so other than that, you still have this stretch cluster. Stretch cluster is available in the Azure Stack HCI OS, or we call it subscription model. When the time you configure the Azure Stack HCI OS, right, you have two options. One is the within a single site. Another option is through the different site, which is stretch cluster. So this stretch cluster, because of the configuration, is configured to the different site. So when one of the site down, so your VM will actually auto fill over to another site. And it's not only the VM, the volume in the Azure Stack HCI will be filled over as well. Then other than that, we still have this option called Azure Site Recovery. So Azure Site Recovery is a function available in the Azure subscription. You need to subscribe it. Okay, so when the time you enable this Azure Site Recovery, you have the option to actually fill over your VM to the cloud. Replicate when the time you configure, it can be replicate to the cloud. When the time DR happen, then you enable the data at the cloud to become the VM. So in the normal time, it is not don't have any VM at the cloud. So you only actually replicate the data to the cloud, so that it saves your VM cost. But when the time disaster happen, then you can turn those data in the vault, right, to become the virtual machine, and it just takes minutes time. I mean, depends on how big your data is. So normally tested is around 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Then you can finish recover one VM. Okay. So of course they are third-party solution. Example Vim. Okay. So Vim is also one of the topic which we will cover maybe next week or maybe next another 2 weeks. Okay. Stay tuned. So today we will not talk about this VM replica because this VM replica I already mentioned last week. So today we will talk about this storage replica. Okay, so let's take a look at storage replica. So this is the Windows Server 2019. So to install this storage replica, I go to the server manager, add roles. Okay. Then I look for this rows. Under storage replica, actually under features. So I click next, click install. Okay. So after install this feature, you require to reboot the servers. So after you reboot the servers, right? You go to the server Windows Admin Center. Before that, let's take a look. So we have the E drive. Okay. So now we go to the Windows Admin Center. Okay, in the Windows Admin Center, I go into the servers. Okay, you can look for this storage replica. Click new. Okay, then you can configure to replicate with another server or even within itself. Okay, this is the example of the storage replica within itself to the different volume. Huh? Okay, so I specify the source server actually is itself. And then it's a must to put a replication group. So it can be any name, okay, as long as meaningful to you. And then specify the source volume. And bear in mind that to use storage replica, it must have a log volume. Huh? Okay, so you must specify a log volume. And then destination server. So in this example, actually, is replicate to itself, but in different drive. Okay, so I replicate to hash drive. Okay, and then log for volume as a G. Okay, and here you can specify the log size. So after that, you click create. Okay, so after done, right, that's what you can see. So this is how you create this storage replica. And your data will start replicate, and this hash drive will become actually not accessible.
I finished my.
Okay. So when the time you need it to be work for your those replicated volume, you want it to be work, right? You need to switch the replica, switch the direction. So once you switch the direction, the passive one will become active, while the active one becomes passive, like I showed to you just now. Okay, so this is how you actually configure the storage replica and how to leverage to use the storage replica when the time you have the VR. Okay, so other than the storage replica, the other one is the stretch cluster. But before I start with this stretch cluster, any question about this storage replica? So far so good, everyone? Okay, so if no, then we proceed with this stretch cluster. Okay, for stretch cluster, let's take a look on this diagram. So we have two sides, as what you can see. The left-hand side is the Malaysia side. The right-hand side is the Australia side. Okay, and in between, we have the side-to-side VPN build. Okay, and then in the Malaysia side, we have the 2-knot edge stack HCI. In the Australia side, we also have another 2-knot edge stack HCI, but both these 2-knot actually built on top of the same cluster. You see this one, cluster 1. Here also cluster 1. So it's a single cluster with the 4 knots configuration. But this configuration is actually configured across 2 different sites. So when the time you have this stretch cluster, when nothing happened, you can actually anytime you can do the volume live migration. Live migrate from the Malaysia side to the Australian side, as well as the VM. The VM also can be migrated from the Malaysia side to the Australia side. But when the time DR happened, let's say DR, the disaster actually happened to the Australia side, the volume will auto fill back to the remaining side. As well, same as the VM. Okay, so this is the demo which I'm going to show to you later. Let's take a look. So as what you can see here, this is the Azure Stack HCI cluster. This is the cluster name. And then we have the 2 sides, Malaysia side and Australia side. And each side, we have only two knots. And then here, as what you can see the volumes. Malaysia side have a volume 01. Volume 01 as a source. Okay. In Australia, have a volume 01 replica as the destination. So this actually is the storage replica. So this stretch cluster leverage on this storage replica function to actually configure to have the function fill over for you. So as well, you can see the storage replica is the node 1 to the node 4. Node 1 in Malaysia, node 4 in Australia. So, and they are using the asynchronous mode. So if you go to see the settings, right, okay, we can see the configuration is using asynchronous. And this mode, actually, you can change if you want. You can change to synchronous or asynchronous after you configure. So, okay, so this is about storage replica. Now we take a look on the virtual machine. So I have the one VM, VM01. This VM01 is running on the not 01, not 01 of the Azure Stack HCI, which is in Malaysia. Okay, now I'm going to show you how we can actually live migrate the volume from Malaysia to Australia. So not 01, not 04. Now I'm going to switch direction. So after I click this switch direction, you see it changed already. The source become not 04, while destination become not 02, which is now replicate from Australia to the Malaysia. Okay, then we see the volumes. Okay, the volume, this Australia side become source already. Just now is the destination, but now it's actually upside down. Okay, Australia becomes source, Malaysia become destination. Then we see the virtual machine. Okay, virtual machine still running at the not 01 in Malaysia. So I'm going to do the live migration. I click this manage and click move. Okay, and I specify the cluster. And then the member server, I point you to the node 03. Node 03 located at Australia. After that, you have to specify the path for the VM which you're going to live migrate. Okay. So once specified, okay, you can also choose to browse if you want to choose to different volumes. You can ignore the error because the error is due to the AJAX stunting. So I just ignore that. Okay, after specify the path, I can start to click the move. So moving the virtual machine, and once successful, you can see the status. Okay, and you can see that the VM actually moved to the node 03. So this is how I demo to you live migration while actually all the nodes are healthy. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you Australia side down. How I'm going to show is, but actually this is a virtual machine. I'm going to shut down the node number 3 and the number 4. I just turn it off. Okay, so turn off, and then we assume that this is the disaster to the Australia side. And as what you can see, if you go to the Windows Admin Center, it showed that Australia side down already. Okay, and then the virtual machine, will it immediately fail back? No. No, you see that it's still at the node number 3. Because this is the unplanned disaster, right? Unplanned failover. So this will actually going to take some time. Okay, but we go and see the volume. You already show the Australia side down, and then this one actually it show this now, which the Australia side is become not detectable, and Malaysia become the source already. No, it becomes source means that it's already failed back. It's already failed back, and we see the storage replica. You saw that not 1 and not 2, which is replication within Malaysia itself already. This happened quite immediate. And now we go back to the virtual machine. You see, you feel back already. You feel back to the not 01. But if you ask me how long this will going to happen, actually during my test, right, it's around 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes. Okay, so it depends on how many VM you have. And if you have more VM, more volume, the data is bigger, I think you are going to take longer than the 15 minutes. Okay. So this is about the site failure for the stretch cluster. Any question? No question? Today very quiet, everyone. Okay. So, okay. If no question, then come to the quiz time already. Okay. Which one is not the supported fault domain scenario in the Azure Stack HCI? This is the last week question. Sorry, I think I didn't prepare this. Okay. Anyway, this is the last week question. Which one is not the supported fault domain in the Azure Stack HCI? So answer is Active Directory failure. Okay. So summary for today. We talk about the chassis failure, talk about the rack failure, and then we cover the site failure. But the site failure we cover today is the VM replication, storage replica, and also the stretch cluster. So still have 2 topics. Okay. These 2 topics is the Azure site recovery, and another one is a Vim. Okay. So next week we will just purely talking about this topic, Azure site recovery, and then we have 2 scenarios. One is site to site failover, another one is site to cloud failover. Okay. Sorry, my side I think a bit noisy. Okay, so any questions so far? Today is early, too early. 9:15. Okay.
Early is good. Early
Early
is
is
good.
good. Okay. So any question? Anyone? So if no, then we're going to dismiss. And then next week, we have the interesting topic is the Azure site recovery. Okay, so everyone don't miss it. It's a very, very good topic when the time you want to deploy for your client for the disaster recovery. Because that Azure site recovery, right, is considered as a how to say, is a very cost-saving solution when the time you want to deploy the disaster recovery. Because Azure site recovery you doesn't need to pay everything. Uh, like many other solutions, you will have to pay for those site, maybe the data center and the VM as well. But site recovery, you only pay for the vault, okay? Vault and the instance. So if nothing happened, you no need to pay any other thing extra until you want to do the testing, or when the time you have the real disaster happen, then only you pay for the virtual machines cost. Okay, everyone stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All
Take
right, take
care.
care.
Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.